He likes to pick up.
Oh, with the music?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm turning on. Of course. Waterhead?
I told him he's grown up now. He's married.
He next, right
I
behind
know.
me.
What day are you getting married?
September 2nd.
Okay,
Where
we're
are
live
you getting
now.
married at?
We're just gonna go downtown.
Yeah,
Oh, good
do
for
the
you.
refresh.
That's
Yeah.
what I did. I just went to Justice Peace because I don't have time for everybody in the bridezillas and all that. I don't do it. I'm not doing
Yeah,
it.
we changed things up because her mother had a brain aneurysm,
Mm-hmm.
so she's,
Right there.
long story short,
Yeah.
she's not able to really.
Right.
So it was like if she couldn't really be a part of that she
Right.
wanted her to.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
It's it's hard. So we'll see.
I totally understand that. Like, just make it simpler, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you get on that live call yesterday?
We'll have to take a picture for social media.
Well, what about last
See
week?
how you look?
They didn't have it last week. It's their first time having it in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And they'll take another one too and tag us in it tomorrow. Mm-hmm.
Oh, we live yet?
Yeah, we live. Hello, viewers. This is the Gray Area, and this is your boy Ray E.
And this is your boy P. Willis. What's happening?
We are back in the building, and we have some celebrities in the building, y'all. I just want to make
Oh,
sure
no.
that y'all understand who's sitting in front of y'all.
Soldiers.
Davisha Fredericks has been on our show a couple of times,
Yep.
and has her own show, and it is doing well and it's doing phenomenal. You took a little break, but you're getting ready to get back on it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Welcome back to the Gray Area.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lucia Sheehan, did I pronounce that
Yes.
correctly? All right, is in the building with us. Yes.
Uh-oh.
Oh, see.
Somebody's volume is up.
Uh-oh, somebody's volume is up.
See, Davisha, you can't get kicked out of the Gray Area as soon as you get in here.
I know, I was like, what's going on? I was trying to share it. I was trying to share it.
It's all good. We got you. We got
Okay.
you. Your foundation is violence-free
Living.
living,
Mm-hmm.
and you got some pretty decent connections and a network that you've been doing. You know, going to for the jail facilities, and
Yes.
you're linked with IUPUI,
Yes.
and you've been doing this for quite some time now. We're going to talk about domestic violence and how that was a part of your life at one time, and how you're able to help other people see it through.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me today.
No
It's
problem.
A
Yes,
pleasure.
thank you for being here.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
And Davisha, you have Susu Global, Speak Up, Stand Up, which is your foundation where you help people not only overcome domestic violence, but help them become entrepreneurs, as a way out. Because as we know, that a lot of people who are in domestic violence situations, they got to figure out how to get that income. Usually their tie is
Right.
tied to some financial situation where they have to stay. So please tell us a little bit more about Susu Global and why it's here today.
Susu Global came about 2 years ago. I pretty much went to bed on a prayer, asking God to show me how to empower women. And he basically told me to go out and start telling my story. And so that's what I did. And then a couple months later after that, I went and started creating Susu Global. And I call it Susu Stand Up, Speak Up, because I'm standing up and speaking up to something that had me broken. And that's domestic violence. And so with Susu, I created workshops, speaking. We had a podcast. We do support groups. And so in the while I was starting Susu, I also had the desire to write a book, because I knew that telling this whole story would put it out more than just speaking about it.
Absolutely.
So now this week I'll be launching my book.
Okay.
So,
Nice.
This weekend, right?
This weekend, yes.
This weekend, you're
Yes.
launching your book. It's called Pieces of Me.
Yes.
Pieces of Me?
Memoirs of Davisha Frederick, Pieces of Me.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about the book and what you hope to do with it.
Yeah, and the title. I mean,
Yeah, the
what
Pieces
prompted
of
the
Me.
title?
So basically, the cover and I'll tell you about the cover. The cover, the concept of the cover is Pieces of Me, and the title. You know, the title's Pieces of Me. You see the shattered because everything around me was breaking down, breaking up, shattered and broken.
Yeah.
But I was still here. I was still intact. So that's the concept of the
Still
book,
smiling too.
and still smiling through it
Yeah,
all. So.
yeah.
So that's the concept of the book. But Pieces of Me, I'm giving you pieces of me. The goal when I wrote the book, when I talked to my writing coach, she said I need you to write down 3 goals. My goal is to empower women, and then also to get people start a conversation. It's a hard conversation to have. So I left a lot of things out of that book so people can say, well, what happened here? Where was this person at? What happened to this person? What escalated here? And then to show people the inside look of domestic violence, because domestic violence is just not black eyes and busted lips. And in this story, you're going to see that.
Awesome.
What do you think are other factors of domestic violence?
Hold on, real quick.
Yes.
I want to get Lucia Seahands. I want you to tell us about your foundation, and we really gonna go deep into domestic violence and get Pat's questions answered.
Okay.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your foundation?
Sure. I started my foundation in 2010. Actually, 2009, I created it down in Colombia. I lived in Cartagena, Colombia for a year teaching English when I retired from my regular job.
Okay.
And so I was down there, it dawned on me that our society views the abuser, the male as the abuser, and the females as the victims. And we have all these programs to help the victims, which are great. I use many of them. But it dawned on me we don't have any programs to help the abuser, the violent person, and maybe they might want to change their life around too. So that was my
Wow, that's an
incentive to
interesting
start
perspective.
that.
I've never heard of that.
Because
Somebody
I
slap
figured-
you, and then you want to help the person that slaps you.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I figure it's just half of the relationship. If we just keep working on the victims, it's just half of the relationship that's
Yeah.
getting worked on, and we're never gonna reduce the stats on it, and we're never gonna have healthy relationships unless
Right.
we work on both sides of the
That's a good,
relationship.
yeah. I mean, that's a very good
good perspective.
Yes.
I never thought of it like that. I was
Right.
just like, throw him away with the key
Right.
and close the door.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But
That's how
apparently
most
that's
people
just
feel. Yeah.
temporarily closing the problem. That person who was the offender is still going to cause issues with somebody else's life.
Right.
Absolutely.
So why not help them?
And I'm finding more and more it's just because they don't have an outlet. They don't know it's a top behavior, and they didn't have a way to turn their
Right.
life around. You know,
Right.
I was a victim, and I didn't know how to turn my life around. So all that violence, all that hate that's inside of you comes out somehow, and until
Wow.
you address it.
So
Right.
in being someone who went through that, you know, you found a way to attack, being able to give someone light on getting out and helping the person who is doing the offending.
Absolutely, yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
My program helps both the victim and the abuser now.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's an awesome program. Help both people.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Pat, you had a couple of questions for Davisha.
Oh no, it's for both the ladies. Like, what are some other factors that contribute to domestic violence?
What are some other types of domestic violence
Yeah.
besides the physical?
Yeah.
So I would say emotional, psychological, financial, sexual.
Stalking.
Yeah, stalking is a form of abuse.
A lot of people don't
Someone-
understand
yeah.
how to realize
Mhm.
How would stalking be?
Someone just constantly stalking you. Like in my book, I talk a lot about stalking, and then I think in the very first chapter, you realize it was stalking was going on, but I didn't realize it. So like to me, like stalking, and what it is, someone constantly coming to your job, constantly calling you, somebody constantly bugging you, somebody just coming, and you're trying to like nowadays you can block people, but they can create. Say they're bothering you through social media, they can create another page and another page and another page. But now like
Persistent people out there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So stalking, I mean, they can follow you. They'll follow you wherever you go. You don't even know they're there. I mean, some people have
Absolutely.
gotten to a point where they can tell you where you've been all day because they are stalking.
Wow.
That's called stalking because
Yeah.
they're following you around
Right.
and bothering you. And like sometimes it may not even be bothering you. I mean, like you see the Lifetime movies, the people peeping in windows. People are really doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I might say that for me, that even I think goes on in relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't trust someone in your relationship and you're constantly checking their phone, you're constantly following them, you're constantly trying to figure out where they're at and have to know
Right.
every single minute,
Right.
that's a form of stalking within a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Somebody constantly
Interesting.
calling, texting,
Right.
texting. over and over and over, and you're like, if it's not you know, if you don't answer and they keep constantly doing it, that's a form of stalking.
Right. In saying that, what are some things with what you just said that people should be aware of in the beginning stages of it?
Yeah.
That seem like you just met somebody, but you don't know. But there's little things that you can see. And
Well,
then-
one thing I can relate to with one of my past marriages, because of my abuse, because of my low self-esteem that I had, anytime somebody would give me any kind of attention, I would just jump on that and think that immediately was care and love. And I had an ex-husband one time that I thought he loved me so much, but he wouldn't allow me to do anything on my own. He would take me to work, pick me up, take me to school. I was older, but I went back to school. Any time I went anywhere shopping, he would take me and pick me up. And I thought that was love, when it was just control. That's all that was. So that's a
Right.
form of that too. So I would
Right.
think anybody in a relationship, don't get that confusion. You know,
Right.
really stand with, and don't give up all your friends, don't give up everybody else, don't make your world their world.
Right.
Right.
That's
Right.
interesting. So
Right.
what would, but you know, you do have some people that say, well, you know, I do all these things because I love you, you know.
Right.
And,
And there's some things, you know, people do, there's some people that's doing good things, but sometimes it's in a controlling way. And the signs that are there, sometimes, like the number one sign I tell people to look for, and it's not always going to be like this, but most abusers, and it's known statistic that most abusers come from abusive homes. And it doesn't always happen like that. Most people change. They say, I don't want to grow up and be like I seen my mother or my father. But I mean, that's a sign to look for. But looking for signs when they're already telling you on dates, like, why are you wearing this? Why do you feel like you need to wear short clothes? Why do you feel like you need to wear makeup? Why do you feel like you need to get your hair done every week? Like these things, like if this person was always an upkept person, I tell people, look for your friends and family. If they have always been upkept, and if they get in a relationship and you've seen them dip real quick, there's something going on.
Right.
There is something going on, and you need to
all of
look
a sudden
into it.
just cut all their hair off or something.
Right, like, I mean, you just see them down. They just look down. You like, this was a person that always looked good, this was the best dress. But now they kind of wearing long sleeve shirts. They're wearing
okay.
long sleeve pants.
Yeah.
Everything is kind of wearing baggy. They just look tired. They look drained. They look like you can tell. There's a totally different person that you're
Right.
looking at, and you're like, what happened? But
Yeah.
really, they can't
That's
tell you what
Or
happened.
even their
But yeah.
attitude.
Yeah,
If
their
they're an
attitude.
outgoing person, all of a sudden they become really quiet and
It's
shy.
strange that y'all saying that because I was watching something on TV last night and it was about like you know, in relationships where the person is overly like controlling and one woman was saying like, you know, the friend that this person and he ended up killing her, but her friend was saying that she used to be open and outgoing and she used to go out all the time and then she turned into like kind of a mole, like she didn't come out
Absolutely.
anymore or do
Right.
anything.
Right.
Wow.
So, you know,
Because
that
I
kind
get-
of stuff.
I think you get to a point too where you might have your own self-doubt, but if you get into a relationship and that relationship turns you into that, if somebody becomes controlling, I think you go through these stages where you're embarrassed and you're not really sure why, and you're not really sure on what level, and you don't really know where to go for help, and
Absolutely.
you don't really know what is going on, because you really do feel that you love this person, and you're trying in your own mind to figure out, they're telling me they're doing this because they love me, so I want to believe this, and you get to the point where it's like a switch, and you just turn that switch on, and you become this other person.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that, you know, there is a line that people cross when it comes to controlling, but I do think that the line is that this is a crazy world that we live in.
Absolutely.
And you want your spouse to be careful, but then, you know, there's a line where you're doing too much, you know.
Right.
So explain to people the difference from wanting someone to be careful out in the world and protect them versus being super controlling.
Like someone just being careful in a relationship,
Yeah, I mean,
like going out and
because
dating.
because I mean, for men, you know, we want to make sure that our family is safe.
Right,
You know what I'm
exactly.
saying?
Absolutely.
So,
Right.
but there's a line. I'm saying there's a line
that you cannot
that
cross
Yeah,
anymore.
that where
Yeah.
it becomes overly too
And
much.
There's
Right.
a real thin
Yeah.
line between caring and controlling.
Right.
A very thin line.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it becomes controlling when you try to tell them what's best for them. You have to allow people to be themselves.
Exactly. And that's
Right.
that's what I tell people. You have to be that support for them no matter what. Like I think people see that their family may be is in a dangerous situation,
Right.
and it's already too late. Because once you're in a controlled environment, you just cannot walk away because
Right.
you're being controlled. So, like,
Right.
if you're a family member, I tell people, you need to try to be that support because they need somebody to talk to. They need someone they can trust. They do
Right.
not need anyone else coming to them telling them, you need to leave, this is stupid, this is dumb. They're already going through that.
Right.
They don't need any bigger burdens from anyone
Right.
else, a friend or family. What they really want you to do is say, what do you need from me
Right,
now?
and that's important because a lot of
Yeah.
people in
Very
those
important.
situations can't cry out. They don't know how
Right.
to. And
Yeah.
this is a big deal in the black community where we don't
Yeah.
want people to know that it's stuff
It's a
going
secret.
on with
It's
a
us.
secret.
So we ain't about to call bro or call mom or call auntie or we're not calling nobody
Yeah.
because we want everybody to know that we good. And you any inkling of telling somebody something and they look at you like, oh, something going on, their whole family
Mhm.
doing stuff.
Absolutely.
So how do people get out of that family shell of caring that they don't want to offend anybody or let anybody know that there's something wron with them? How do
I think
people?
it's a control
help?
thing. Like it's very hard for someone to say, I'm in an abusive relationship. I'm in, and then sometimes people are in denial.
Mm,
It's very hard to come to someone that you love and tell them,
hmm
I don't know how to get out of this. I
Right.
don't know what to do next. And then sometimes people really have to be at a point where they are ready to leave.
I was gonna say, they have to be ready.
Right.
They have to be 100% ready. If they're not ready,
Preaching
they're
to the
not
choir.
leaving. You preaching
Right.
to the choir. It doesn't matter if you mama, daddy, auntie, grandma, big mama, whoever. They're not going
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes people are really in love with this person and they're really hoping that this person is going to change.
Right, and that sometimes leads to death.
And it leads to death. And that's
Yeah.
yeah, domestic violence is the third leading of deaths in America.
Wow.
Mhm.
But I think,
That's right.
I think one of the big things is to be able to, especially for men, I've
Mhm.
learned that working with men, I work with men, my program, as, I don't know if I said that or not, is in the jails and the prisons
Yeah.
is where I go.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I've learned through giving my program is how many young boys are sexually abused.
Wow.
Mhm.
And they go through the same emotions, the same feelings, the same fear, the same, what I want to say, embarrassment
Mhm.
as a young girl does. But unfortunately, in our society, we look at the young girl, and when we do find out, we try and take care of her and try to
Mhm.
make things right.
Absolutely.
When the young boy comes out or tells
yeah.
somebody, he gets the kudos, way to go,
Yeah,
way to be a
yeah,
man.
right.
And what does he do with that? Because he still has all of that anger and fear
Mhm.
and hate that's in
Yeah.
there. So he just suppresses it more and more, and that's got to come out sooner or later. And it's a matter of changing your thought patterns,
Mhm.
and that's what we teach in the class. And I think we get back to the family thing. I think people have to understand it's not about the family. It's about you. And when you understand that you want help, you need to go somewhere, no matter who it is or where it's at, to start changing your thought process.
Right.
Because the family is only going to know what they already know in the comfort. You might have some support people there, but you have to do the work yourself, and you have to
Right.
take that first leap. And that first leap is the hardest step to take, but it's well worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
okay.
I wanted to speak on and we're going to rewind a little bit, go back to the beginning of why an abuser becomes an abuser. My thing is like, I've watched a couple of different, shows that delve deep into it, and I kind of agreed with them on some aspects of it in regards to like whooping your child.
Mhm.
I think that, and that's another thing, where there's a line between discipline and enforcement.
Right.
Like when you have to like beat your kid down, that's different from disciplining your kid.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's
I don't
ridiculous,
whoop
yeah.
my kids at all. I think that you have to get through to them through speaking to them first.
Yeah.
Right.
Now this is different from if you let your kid do what he want to do, and then he's a teenager. Now you want to put hands on him.
Right.
You done lost
It's
control
too
already.
late.
Yeah.
It's too late.
You have
It's
to
too
start
late.
at an
I
early
feel
age.
like
Yes,
Early
absolutely.
age, yeah.
you talk to start at an early age, and you speak to your children in a way that puts fear in them,
Mhm.
and also makes them stand up when you walk in the room, and you demand respect, that you can avoid a lot of that. I've had success with my kids by, I can just look at them, or, most men can do that with their
Right.
kids, but some people attack their kids hoping that that's going to fix things, and it doesn't. Oftentimes kids don't cry because because it hurts. They cry because you're whooping them. So
Right.
it's not going to discipline them in a way to make them think about what they did, because they're
Right.
they're going to do it again.
Right.
You know, but if you speak to them and explain to them and help them understand what happened and what they did, then I think that you'll have better results. Like I
Right.
said, you know, this works when you have little kids and you train them up this way. But
Mhm.
if you done been whooping your kid from the time they was little all the way up to an adult, the kids are going to become numb. Even teenagers are going to become numb to that, and
Yeah.
eventually one day they're going to end up hitting somebody else, or
Absolutely.
They become
beating
very-
somebody else,
Absolutely.
or becoming violent.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, they
So
become,
that's where I was going with that. Is
Yeah.
that I think that those situations where kids are that's what they know subliminally when they grow up. They know that if you cause pain to somebody, it stops them from doing something.
Right.
So
It is
that's
a
what the
taught
whoopings
behavior.
when they were young come
Yes.
in, and they display those as an adult.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think it comes from, it's a learned behavior. This is not something people just pick up and say, I just want to start hitting people. I
Right.
want to hit someone in my
Right.
relationship. This is
Yeah.
a learned behavior. Everything we do in society is a learned behavior.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like some people just learn how to go, they follow their parents' trend.
Mm-hmm.
Most kids will try to follow their parents'
Right.
success or even not success. What they're seeing is what they're going to do.
Right.
So, like, I mean, that's how I see it. It's
Mhm.
not always the case. I believe that sometimes some kids are hurt or traumatically hurt sometimes, and it just becomes sometimes they get angry,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's not really about domestic violence in the home. It's about something else that has happened.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You never know. It could have been a kid. Sometimes this kids is bullied their whole life and never say nothing to their parents, but then they grow up and be abusive to someone else.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
What are your thoughts on that,
That's
Well,
Lucy?
I agree with you. You're
Okay.
absolutely right on the difference between discipline and punishment.
Mhm.
Punishment's just beating them up and telling them they're a bad person.
Right.
When they're
right.
not a bad person, whereas you're saying if you make them part of the solution and
Right.
explain to them what they're doing wrong,
Mm-hmm.
I think that it is a taught behavior, and I think that's where your bullies come from. A lot
Right.
of your bullies come from that, and that's all they know. To me, a bully is just a cutter, which is another form of, because when they see the violence, when they're being violently attacked when they're young, or they see violence from parents, again, they internalize that and it has to come out somehow. And if you're
Yep.
taught that's what it's supposed to do, that is what you're going to go look for.
Mm-hmm.
What do
Right.
they say? 67% of the teens dating are in abusive situations,
Absolutely.
have parents that have
Yeah.
been,
Yeah.
it come from parents who have been abusive.
Absolutely. And another statistic was based on what I've seen on TV was based on kids who get no discipline
Absolutely.
at a young age. So not only do you have to be careful with kids that you discipline,
Yeah.
overly discipline. You have to be careful with not disciplining kids at all.
right.
it has to be
because those
like a
kids grow up
balance.
and,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they think that
absolutely.
they can
Has
do
to be a
anything they
balance.
want to do, and that they won't have any what do you call
The
it?
consequences.
Yeah, consequences
Consequences
for it.
from it. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so you got to be careful on. You got to understand that there's some discipline that needs to take place. But to me, if you can get to them young and you can make
Yeah.
verbally strong, solutions,
Yep.
that put fear in them, I think that's where it starts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
agree.
and the fear part is more of a fear of just being respectful, not
Right,
fear
right,
like
yeah,
you
right.
have a gun to the head.
It's a
Right.
constructive fear.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, we
Yeah.
practice that same model in our house. Like, I just don't discipline my kids. I've never spanked them. Like they,
Right.
to me, I feel like if I ground you, if I take your iPhone and your PlayStation, your Xbox, you're going to be hurt more than me to spank you.
Absolutely. These
That's
days,
gonna do more to you.
remote
I know what it's gonna
technology,
do
and
to
that's
you.
like cutting them in the.
It's like
them
cutting.
low.
It's like cutting the head off.
I
almost.
use it, and listen, my
It
son
works.
and look, my son is in the, he's in the other room, and I use this as a great example. There are these pair of Jordans that I got them right,
Yeah.
and I purposely put them up, and I said, son, do not touch these shoes. Don't let me tell you when you can wear them. Man, he worked his mother. He worked her. He said, mommy, and I took the shoes out of his room and put them in our spare bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
Behind some things, so he had to dig through and grab them. And then he said, "Ma, do these shoes match my shorts?" And she didn't know that I had this, conversation with him.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, "Yeah,
Yeah.
So he wears them, and I catch him in them. So I, took them from him and said, "Hey, man, listen, you're not playing the video game, and you will never, wear these shoes ever again."
Right.
And he asked me earlier, "Hey, Dad, can I get, one more chance?" No.
No.
And
Because
he
Absolutely
got
not.
so
there's
hurt.
rules, there's
Yeah.
discipline,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a different. It's just
Yeah.
yeah.
He was
I
so hurt
believe
by
that
that.
hurt. I mean, it's not to hurt the child. You're really disciplining them to say, hey, there's some hardcore things that could be taken away here
Yeah,
if you don't
Absolutely.
do what you're supposed to do.
right, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think I think that's true with most people because we live what we're taught.
Right.
Right.
We live what we're taught, no matter
Mhm.
what we're taught. We're taught that's the right way to live.
Right.
And just because you're taught one way doesn't make it the right way.
Mhm.
Right.
So we have to start allowing people to think for themselves because we never get that opportunity.
Mhm.
From the time you're born, you're always told what's expected
Yeah.
of you and how
Absolutely.
to act and how to behave.
Mhm.
Right.
So I think once we start allowing people to understand and to set boundaries,
Absolutely.
personal boundaries, you'd be surprised in my classes. I always ask that
Mhm.
question, and maybe out of a class of 30, there'll be 2 people that know what personal boundaries are.
Mm.
And if you don't have personal boundaries,
Can you explain to viewers who may be going through that what personal boundaries is?
well, for me, personal boundaries is what you will or will not tolerate.
Right.
You know, this is, I can't go beyond this, I can't go beyond that, I have to have this in a relationship, or I have to have that in a relationship, or
Right.
we match up, you know, you're doing something that really, really upsets me, and that upsets me, and you're telling your dating,
Right.
your
Mhm.
boyfriend or girlfriend
Mhm.
that, and they continue to do that, they're crossing that boundary.
Mm.
Right.
And you've got to look at those signs, you've got to look at those clues, because if they keep crossing these boundaries, that's what dating is for. This
Right.
is what I believe, these are my ethics, my beliefs,
Mhm.
whatever, and these are yours. And if we kept stepping over each other's boundaries, we're going to constantly be arguing. We
Right.
should be the same person, but we shouldn't be constantly encroaching on other people's boundaries.
Right.
It's disrespectful.
That makes a lot of
Absolutely.
sense.
Yeah.
That makes a great deal of sense.
Which leads to other things.
Absolutely.
Like arguments can lead to some pretty violent situations.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, arguments can get heated in a blink of a second.
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and it's something you're not expecting.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But I mean, you got to be able to, like, being married. Yeah, we're gonna argue, but I know how to control it. My husband knows how to control it. Like, it's not like one of these things is gonna spiral out of control.
Right.
Like, we call it the love war.
Right.
It's a love war.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's like,
Love war.
okay, I love you, okay? Like, I'm upset, but I'm not really
Right,
upset. Like, I
right.
still love you.
Right,
So, like,
right.
we're not going to war, though.
Right.
Like, we're not doing it.
But when y'all know each other,
Yeah.
that's easy to understand for
Mhm.
people who are just trying to figure it out. It's
Right.
like it really is war.
Exactly.
It is work because
You
I
know.
think
Yes.
it goes back to the boundaries we were talking about and
Mhm.
having respect for yourself.
Exactly.
Right.
If you have boundaries and respect for yourself, somebody has to take that step back and go, okay, well, I understand what you're saying, I don't agree,
Mm-hmm.
but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I understand, instead of always having to be right. It
Right.
boils down to always having to be right, and that's not the case.
That's the thing too. Like in relationships, people get into this thing where I got to say the last word.
Last word, or I got to always be right.
Talk about why it's important for people to compromise and be able to negotiate when who's right and who's wrong and whatnot, or just agree to disagree and be done with it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's not going to agree on everything, and you really don't want everybody to
Absolutely.
agree on
Exactly.
Because that's what makes this fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So explain or go into depth on why it's important for people to understand that arguing is not a toxic. It don't have to be a toxic thing.
It doesn't have to
be a
be
pretty
toxic.
constructive.
But we live in a world where people do not communicate.
Right.
And that is the
Mhm.
number one key of a relationship. It's not
Mm.
sex, it's not money, it's communication.
Absolutely.
Right.
If you can communicate with your spouse or with whoever you're dating with or in a relationship,
Mhm.
things go a lot smoother because texting can go wrong so quick.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Oh, yeah.
emailing or sending a message through Messenger, like
'Cause
everything.
the words have no feelings.
Right, no, they
Absolutely.
have no feelings.
Dehumanizing
See them for what
us.
they are.
You know,
Yeah,
they
and
send
they can-
emojis and all these
Yeah.
things, and what does that mean?
And
Like
the tone
everybody,
of the
you
text
may
could be
say the
misconstrued.
smiley face, and I say the smiley face mean two separate things.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, like-
you
See what I'm
smiling
saying?
at me,
Right.
you
Let the whole
text,
tone.
you think this
Right.
is funny?
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
But
And
the
it,
tone could be all.
the tone,
Yeah,
you
the tone
you
could be
put
misconstrued.
all caps. You're not
Yeah.
allowed to put anything in all caps anymore.
Yeah, and see,
Yeah.
I'm like,
I
what
used to
is
type
this?
like that. You know,
I
all
this
caps
is
with.
easier.
Yeah, just type
Why
like,
you
hey,
screaming
man.
at me?
Yeah, well,
Right.
yeah, you know what? You're like, no, I'm just excited.
Not
You
excited,
know,
like,
By
or
the
just
time you meet
typing
up,
it.
you're in a
Yeah.
fight.
But I mean,
Right.
like, I think if you're in a relationship with someone, that's the main key. If you're
Yeah.
trying to, like, if you know that if y'all having a disagreement, it needs to be a communication. Y'all have to talk about the disagreement. You
Right.
can't, like, have a disagreement and then wash it under the rug and we fine,
Oh, yeah.
because somebody's feelings is still
Right.
hurt,
It's still
and somebody,
sitting
and guess
somewhere.
what? When the next argument come up,
Coming
that's
back up.
coming back up.
Right.
And so, like, I believe that communication helps a relationship a
Mhm.
lot. Because if you don't have that, all you're going to have is arguments and
Mm.
fighting.
Is there
because
a-
you can't get anything done without
Yeah.
communication.
Is there a way for someone who is in a domestic violence situation, who's probably been in it for a while, to communicate with the abuser or is it lost cause? You know, how does someone who is in love and who wants to help this person, how do they go about communicating with a person like that?
That's a good question. I think it's an excellent question because when you into it for so long,
Mm-hmm.
most people are really in love with that person. They do want this person to change. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing: that person has to want to change.
Right.
If this other person don't want to go to counseling, if this other person don't want to go get no help, don't want to talk to the pastor, don't want to talk to nobody, but act like everything's great, and then behind closed doors it's a different story. There's no way that you can you cannot change that person.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot change that person. You cannot talk that person down
Mm-hmm.
because these are like, I tell people, if you're supposed to be if you're married and y'all in a domestic violence relationship, y'all two should be going to two separate counselors. You should not be sitting in the same room with that person because guess what? That person's getting ready to manipulate that counselor.
Wow. Oh, that's a different perspective right there.
It's going to
That's
happen.
interesting.
Wow.
Because that person has been used to manipulating everybody else. Everybody else is manipulated because that's what they do.
Being sweet and kind.
This is how they
and I
get
didn't do
into,
nothing.
getting your number from your family, getting your number from your mom, because they get back in.
Mm-hmm.
After they can have done you wrong, they're going to get back in because they're good at manipulating,
Mhm.
talking their way back into it.
Wow.
It's easy to be, they're good at that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and not just manipulating, but I think that if that's the same way with my class, I can't have couples coming to my class because if somebody's already the violent person, if somebody's already the abuser, has taken control of that relationship, that other person's not even going to speak up. They're already
Right.
lost before they even step through the door.
Right.
And that's the same way with going to different counselors. If you're going to the same counselor together, the person who is being abused isn't going to speak out.
Right.
Wow.
No,
That's
they're
a
not.
big deal, and I've never
Yes.
heard it like that before. But that's a very
It's a
important
very big
point
deal.
Absolutely.
because someone is always manipulating or whatnot.
And I can tell you nowadays, like I was in that relationship for 10 years. Nowadays, people are in these relationships for 3 to 6 months, and it's bad. It's really, really bad. So it's bad to the point that they will not speak at all about it because it's so much has happened in that short time frame because everybody has this easy access now. This easy access, which is internet.
Right.
They have this easy, and then a lot of people get abused just through social media.
Absolutely. And I don't mean to take this in a different direction, but can I ask a question
Sure,
or say
yeah.
something at this
Sure.
point? Because I see this from a different angle too, being both a victim at one time and
Sure.
then helping the abusers
Right,
too.
right.
And what I really finally think that people have to start focusing on and realizing, if you know that you're being in an abusive relationship, because some people don't even know they are,
Right.
but if you know you're in an abusive relationship, then you really need to, like you said, maybe even talk to the person. I don't appreciate this. I don't, however you can bring that up. If they
Right.
continue to do it, then you have to look at you.
Right.
You have to heal and find out what it is about you that makes you stay, because there's something there that
Yeah.
you need to heal, that's
And I was
making,
gonna ask that
allowing
question.
you. How can I love somebody? And I look back on my past relationships. How could I say I loved him when he was beating me all the time? When he
Right.
would choke me till I
Right.
passed out.
Wow.
How can that be
Right.
love?
Right.
So-
And that's what you're not realizing at the time when you're in it.
Right.
So what made y'all stay?
There's so many different reasons, and I talk about it in the book, and that's why I talk about that in the book, because so many people want to know, why did you stay? My first incident, I was 16 years old, and I was being dragged down the hallway at a basketball game at a totally different school where I didn't even know where I was at. And so, to me, I didn't grow up in a household where I got whoopings. I didn't grow up in a household with a male figure. I was the oldest of five siblings. So when that happened to me, I was terrified. I walked right past my mother, and she asked me how was the game, and I said fine, and went upstairs.
Wow.
There was no way I was getting ready to turn to my mom and tell her what just happened, because I know she was going to click. She was just, she was that mother that was like, nobody's going to step on her kids. So for me, that was terrifying. I had never
You were
been.
more terrified of your mom's reaction than what the person did to you.
No. I was terrified
No,
of what
she's
happened
terrified,
to
yeah,
me,
what
but I
happened.
was terrified also of telling my mom, what do I tell my mom? What do you tell? I was thinking, what do I say? I just got
But your
dragged
mother
down
was
the
very, very protective of her
protective.
kids.
Yeah, she was very protective, but I mean, like, how do you tell her? How was I supposed to tell her that? And at the same time, I am terrified. Like I said, that night he put me out of the car at the beginning of my street. I wasn't terrified of walking home. I was terrified of what just happened to me.
Right.
So at that point, I instantly blamed myself. I thought everything was my fault. Like, I thought, why did this
You
just
did
happen to
something
me?
wrong.
I
That's what you felt
feel
like.
like I did something wrong. So at 16, and this is going on, like, Indiana is the second highest teen dating abuse in the country.
Wow.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
So this was going on a lot,
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
and you're not. It's not something you're going to say because you're scared.
Right.
Like, if you're not, even if you have been in an abusive home, this is not something you get ready to have a conversation with your kids. Most kids, teenagers, are not having conversation with their parents anyways.
Right.
Like, I was able to have a conversation with my mom, but I just didn't know really, like, what to say. I'm just trying to figure out what just happened.
What was your second interaction with this
Person,
boy?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Yeah.
So basically,
Awkward?
after that, yeah, it's awkward. It's awkward. You know, like I tell in the book, I was apologizing. I thought it was my fault. He wanted me to explain everything that was going on. He was cussing at me, fussing at me, yelling at me.
What
And
prompted
then-
him to do that?
Oh, so basically, so if I tell you this part, you're gonna tell the book.
Oh, okay,
Basically,
never
I
mind.
was on the phone with a friend,
Uh-huh.
a guy friend at school,
Mhm.
and he freaking clicked. And ever since after that, even if I spoke to the first time I spoke to guys at school, and he was at our school,
Mhm.
he turned to me like in a forceful attitude and was like, "You shouldn't speak to guys. That makes you look like a whore. You're looking bad. Like, girls don't speak to guys. You know, you need to stop speaking to guys. That's just not how it is.
Mhm.
Like, if you're with me, you speak with me."
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like saying hi was not an option anymore after that.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, my circumstances obviously were different, but I was 11 and mine was a family member.
Wow.
So it was it was my brother-in-law. So I was mortified and I was threatened. So I to keep my mouth shut. So that was totally different circumstances. But I
Mhm.
think what we need to focus here on is that's a huge invasion of
Mhm.
privacy,
Right.
Mhm.
and to try and process that,
Mhm.
you don't even know where to begin.
Right.
You shut down. You're
At a
scared.
young age.
You
Mhm.
take on that guilt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't even really know how to identify that guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so for me, the reason why I stayed, like I mentioned earlier, I just felt like I was trash.
Mm-hmm.
And for anybody to give me
Wow.
any kind of affection, I would just latch on to them thinking that this
Mhm.
nobody else would want me. Nobody
Right.
else cared about me. This is the best I could do. And then they reiterated that because the men that I chose would always tell me how fat and ugly and stupid I was and that nobody did want me. So that would just
Right.
reinforce what
Right.
I already thought about myself. But it's just, it is such a shock to your system, like, you don't tell anybody because you don't
Mhm.
even know how to process it yourself.
Right.
Right.
You've already blamed yourself and have
Yes.
taken on the burden, of what
the
did I?
shame,
Yeah.
and the guilt.
Yes.
Like,
Right.
is this really happening to me? Like, I didn't, like, at that time, I didn't even think anything about abuse when it
Mhm.
happened to me. That's not what I thought.
Right.
Like, I didn't feel like I just got beat up. I just felt like I got dragged down the hallway. But this was scary.
Right.
It was scary for me to get out of the shower. No, I had carpet marks on my bottom.
Right.
Like, that was, I was like, oh my God, like, what do I do? Like, what if my mom
Wow.
sees it? What am I going to say? Like, I'm going
Right.
to have to tell her. She
Right.
sees me. You know what I mean?
I mean, was this an older?
So we were 2
Yeah.
years difference. He was 2
Okay.
years older than me.
So he was technically an adult.
Yep, I was 15. He was 17.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Close to it,
So
Yeah,
he, I
close
mean,
to it.
he should have been in jail for what he did, but there was no way for you to. You was
Yeah.
scared.
And then after that, like, he was my first boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
He was my first sex partner.
Did you feel like that was what relationships were?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Because at school, I'm in high school. I'm in school with kids that are anywhere from 14 to 20.
Mhm.
So I've seen a lot of girls walking around with guys with black eyes.
Wow.
I saw that
Mhm.
at school.
Mhm.
And I mean, it wasn't something common every day, but I saw it and was like, okay, well, what? She's still with them. You know, that's what I would think, but I was thinking, that's a really bad situation. But I never thought, and I talk about that in the book, I really didn't think that I was in this abusive relationship because all of my abuse was not physical.
And,
Wow.
and there really is no platform to speak out. at least when I was younger.
Right.
And I don't even think there is today. I'm not in the schools, but just to hear some of the young girls that I do talk with.
There is,
Here
the
and there.
Domestic Violence Network does go into the schools, and they do,
Good.
they do talk to the students,
They
but they're
come
not
here
in
too.
every school. Yeah, and they've come here too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so they do
Yeah.
they do speak out to the students. The thing is, I think, like at my daughter, she just graduated North Central last year,
Mhm.
and they had a program there. Several different programs for the girls to come and talk about domestic violence. They would let them out the class. It would be speakers come in and talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a good way for them to get out and talk about it without like telling their parents. It wasn't something that these adults was getting ready to
Mm-hmm.
tell their parents about because they were trusting in them. So they were just trying to give them a way to talk about it and open up about it. I know the juvenile center, I've done speaking there, like they do something, you can come in as often as you want and
Mhm.
talk to the girls.
Uh-huh.
And they got girls in there as young as 9 years old.
Wow.
And I mean, I experienced a girl telling me she stabbed her mom's boyfriend in the back at 5
Wow.
because he was abusing her, and I thought, oh my God, I
Wow.
couldn't even imagine. And so she was like, that is where her behavior started
Right.
Absolutely.
after that because she saw him abusing her and she stabbed the man. She's
Wow.
5 years old.
We're living in a time where the kids are disconnected from feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It
Absolutely.
seems like it's easier now. Like, you know, you thought it was more prevalent when you were younger. It's probably even more prevalent now because there's a lot of heartless kids out there
Yeah.
Yeah.
that can't connect with people.
And
Right.
you know, you shut yourself down, you put these walls around you, and the more walls you put around you, and the more you shut yourself, numb yourself down, the more you're gonna do things that you don't really feel.
Right.
You know, mine was a little bit different because I didn't really have any place to go to talk to somebody, so I turned to drugs.
Oh.
Somewhat. I went into alcohol,
Right.
drank a lot. I would get drunk or high and walk down the Near East Side, lived on the East Side, on 10th Street, like at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, just praying that somebody would hit me with the car
Oh,
and take me
wow.
out of my pain because I didn't have an avenue or somewhere to
Right.
go to that I
Right.
felt safe.
Mhm.
I didn't know how to start even talking about it.
Yeah.
Your experience at 11 years old, this is kind of just went through. You just went through a cycle of
I did.
Mhm.
feeling bad and not
Mhm.
kind of knowing what to do, and then not only that, there's people who don't understand.
Right.
You
Right,
know, I can only
absolutely.
imagine that. You know, you get to an age where you're supposed to know the right things and all this, but people don't know everybody's past. Like, you don't know
Right.
what that person went through as a kid, and then they're leading up to now, which is why I understand why you help both sides. Is because, you know, now you have a person who is an abuser who probably needs help, who
Mhm.
needs
Right.
someone to talk to him, you know, but everybody else throws him under the bus and throws him away when that he could go mess with somebody else and do the same
Absolutely.
thing.
And I'm not justifying what abusers or
Sure.
violent people do,
Sure.
but if you really look at their behavior, they were probably victims at one time,
Mhm.
or they
Yeah.
wouldn't be behaving the way they're
Exactly.
behaving.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what I like to get at. I like them to look and see what happened to them in their past so that they can address it, knock it down, and move forward in a positive way.
Absolutely. I
Wow.
think that's so true.
Can you tell us about like how you implement your plan to go in and effectively help people with violence-free living?
It's a 6-week program. You mean just tell about
Yeah,
it? Okay, it's a
yeah.
6-week program. I'm in the jails 2 hours, or the prisons 2 hours each time I go in, and we talk about some pretty heavy topics,
Mm-hmm.
and then we drill down. We talk about anger. We talk about grief. You've got to go through grief. I am just amazed at how many people don't even realize there's a grief process to go through. And
Right.
unless you go through that grief process and you eliminate that, it's just, again, going to bottle up inside of you. We talk about how everybody who has ever touched your life helps form who you are today.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look back on things, we talk about history and some of the history that's gone on. All
Yeah.
those things make us who we are, and if we can address them and look at them, the guys love it. I've had the wardens tell me that I've never had to put out a flyer in the jails or advertise it. It's all word of mouth. And I usually have 30 guys per class, 25 to 30 guys per class. Some of them take it twice. We have
Wow.
an 82% non-recidivism rate for violence
Oh,
that
that's
people
nice.
who have taken
Oh,
my
that's
class.
awesome.
Wow.
82%. Yeah,
That's
that's pretty
That's
awesome.
really good.
So and I have guys calling me all the time when they get out, either to thank me, to tell me that they're getting married, to tell me they've been out for 5 or 6 years and they've not, they now are in healthy relationships.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it boils down to, it's about learning how to look at you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's not about this person's doing this to me. They're not doing anything to you. You're allowing them to do it.
Right.
Mhm.
So what, let's look at you and find out what's going on inside of you, or what has gone on inside of you, so we can break that down and you won't allow that anymore. I had to learn that.
Mhm.
Why did I only bring in abusive, older, alcoholic men into my life?
Mhm.
It wasn't about them. I brought them into my life because that's
Right.
all I thought I deserved.
Right, right. That's what I was going to ask you. Why
Well,
did you feel like
yeah.
that was it? And a lot of women are going through, and men are going through this in their personal relationships.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like, I see a lot of women and men saying, "Man, ain't no good women out there. Ain't no good
Yep.
men out there."
Yep.
But they're naturally picking the wrong people
Absolutely.
and welcoming this person that they would never be with.
Or how many people do you know are in an abusive or non-healthy relationship, and they're like, well, I'm fed up with this, and they get out of that relationship only to get into another relationship
With the
identical.
same thing.
Identical.
Right.
Identical.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
they're
that's
not-
what they're used to,
Continues.
like a comfort zone.
Right,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's their
And I would
comfort
just
zone.
like to share, I had a guy in my class, which kind of brought it home for me, because he took my class and he said, I have a question. He said, I saw my mom get beat up all the time, and I swore I would never hurt or hit a woman. And I'm in here for domestic violence. I beat up my girlfriend. He said,
Wow.
and I cry about it. Why do I do that? Of course, I'm not a counselor, so I could not answer that, but I could just give him my opinion.
Right.
But to me, it seems pretty common sense,
Mhm.
That's what he was taught.
Right.
Although he doesn't want to do that, that's what he was
Mhm.
taught, so obviously that's what he's going to do until he started to address it and understand it. I was very proud of him for even bringing it up and talking about it.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Chris Brown his mom was in an abusive relationship
Mhm.
where he basically wanted to kill the guy, and and he grew up with that, and then this is what we talked about early on, is stuff being in you because of a reaction to seeing it as a kid. He basically seen a man beat on his mother as a kid, and he ended up growing up and beating on another woman, and that being a part of his personal, and he had sort of a documentary on TV where he kind of talked about that, and talked about how he couldn't unleash his feelings, and everybody he ran into,
Right.
he just reacted different. He had to look at
Mhm.
himself and say, man, I just became the person that was beating on my mom.
Yeah.
And that's what we were talking about, where it starts as a kid, and these things, and you grow up as an adult, and you push those feelings, or the feelings that you have in you, you push those on other people through violence.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And I've watched his documentary, and it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing because Chris Brown is awesome.
Super talented.
Oh,
Super
it's
talented, and
extremely talented.
Exactly, and this is what gets me with people, because people are like, I can't believe you support Chris Brown. I don't support Chris Brown. I support his talent. I don't support what he's done. You understand what I'm saying? You got to understand, like, people are going to do some things you don't
Right.
like,
Right.
but there's another part of them that is great.
Right. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And I think he's a great person. He just got wrapped up in something
Yeah.
real quick,
Yeah.
and it went bad and viral real
Right.
quick
and,
for
and,
him.
and it can be
Yeah.
avoided. A
Yeah.
lot of this stuff can be avoided if it's addressed. And if you are able to, as a person, identify that, man,
Absolutely.
why do I get so frustrated
Right.
with the little things? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what makes me click and go there?
Yeah.
So realizing some of that stuff.
Mhm.
Same thing with R. Kelly. R. Kelly, he just put out this song. I admit
Oh
or
my
whatever.
I confess to somebody that
but
19
if
minutes.
you really listen to
Have you heard it?
No, I
His-
haven't.
Oh, wow.
But the way you guys are acting.
Yeah,
him as a
it's just-
youth, you just like, dude, you had a crazy life as a kid.
Yeah.
Well,
and
I
all
heard
this
it through
leads
you
up
guys'
to
show.
yeah,
I heard it
absolutely.
through you guys'
Yeah.
show.
Now,
Yeah.
now, would you say the same thing for R. Kelly that you just
No.
said about Chris Brown?
No. Absolutely
Why
not.
not?
I mean, there's just
There's
there's
a good side
there's
with the music. Did you
I
have the
don't
other
think
side?
that he's that great. I mean,
Gotcha.
it's the
Yeah.
same thing over and over and over again.
Right.
He's doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is Bump and Grind 2018. That's it.
Right.
I mean, Chris Brown, he can switch it up. He
Yeah.
can change the theme. I mean, the dude is on tour. Like, my daughter went and seen him last week. I was
Yeah.
like, I should have went. Like, so I can hear all the great songs. But I mean, like, I think sometimes in writing this book, that's one thing that has brought like full circle to me in front of my face is we will judge somebody and not know their story.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's what is like really like, I tell people, like, we got to stop judging the situations
Right.
because we don't know the story.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We don't, they have a story. There's something behind what is going on.
Right.
So it has made me have a different outlook at
Mhm.
people because it's just eye opening.
Yeah.
Because it's like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
look at the story.
Yeah.
Look
all
at the
have
story,
history.
and it's a history behind it. Not in the book. I talk about the background. I talk about the background that I knew already before I got in a relationship with him.
You know, growing up, did you have any relatives that just picked on you all the time?
Yeah, I always did.
I mean,
yeah.
it just made you sick. Like every time, you know, there's like a barbecue, any type of family function, that relative or relatives
Yeah.
just picked on you. Like, what did that do to your psyche? You know, your self-esteem.
Like I think my cousin, like we grew up like sisters,
Uh-huh.
and she always did that to me. She always like poked at me and bullied me, but like now to this day, like she does not bother me. Like,
Yeah.
but I mean, as a kid,
Mhm.
I mean my self-esteem and like that's like something that I talk about, like where my self-esteem was with, even with my writing, and with who I was and who I was trying to be for everyone else.
Mm.
I was trying to be what I thought everybody else wanted me to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that was easier for me to do than just going around just being by myself.
Mm.
Because being by myself wasn't fun. But if I could get in, and that was the thing. The guy that I was dating was popular. He was popular everywhere he went. So I became popular.
Mm-hmm.
And that became fun.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we
Right.
focus on everybody else, we
Right.
don't have to look at ourselves.
Exactly.
Mm.
You don't have to look at it.
Yeah.
That's a
Right.
good point.
Yeah.
Wow. So you kind of hide in the misery, you know.
You can just
And
hide
you-
in it.
And can you talk about cloaking yourself, like becoming, make this being normal? You know, like you both have been in relationships, abusive relationships that have lasted some time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do you make it a normalcy? How do you make it normal? Like what happens when you just expect to get hit, or you expect to get punched, or you expect something to happen? Like,
Yeah.
explain that process and
You just shut down,
Mm-hmm.
you go through the motions, and you act the part.
mm,
I mean, that's pretty basic, but that's, or simply said, but I think it's because you want to please,
Mm-hmm.
because you're running from yourself.
mm,
But you know, the whole time I was in any abusive relationship, up until I started healing and came through with mine, there was always something deep within me that I just kept suppressing more and more, because who I was being, who I was portraying, who I was, like you said, what I was trying to pick up your mannerisms, or your mannerisms, or being
Yeah.
somebody
Mhm.
else. I knew there was somebody in there yelling, "I want out." I just didn't know how to let this person out,
right.
Mm-hmm.
because it never felt right.
Right.
I would say it would. I would act like I was in love. I would act like I was in this happy relationship, but there wasn't anything about it that was
Right.
happy.
Wow. Oftentimes, people in your shoes end up hurting the other person really badly
Yeah.
because there's no other way out.
Yeah.
You know,
The
there's
number
You
one,
hold all this
uh,
stuff in
yeah.
instead of letting it out.
I read an article, probably last year about, and then we're talking about black women in jail.
Mhm.
The average black woman is in jail for murdering a man that has abused her.
Wow.
The
Yeah.
average? Wow.
That's why I was like, yeah, I mean, it was talking about a
Wow.
percentage, and it was the lady that was doing the article
Mhm.
was doing it because her sister had got life for killing her abuser, and they had been to her house over 25 times for abusive, and she had a restraining order. Like, it was just so many things that had happened,
And they
but
gave her
she
life in
still,
prison for that?
yeah, and I was like, wow, like a woman will get more time than a man on domestic violence.
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
just something that happened a few years ago where a woman
I know.
shot in the air,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to get her abuser off of her, and she ended up going to jail for some time. She was just released recently, which is a godsend. But
Yeah.
you know, they were talking about that versus stand your ground, because these were kind of in the same location.
Mm-hmm.
But why is that though? Like, what? Okay, if a man is beating a woman
Mm-hmm.
and the woman kills the man, why would the woman serve more time?
Well, what I
Or-
read,
or-
because I read a lot about that, because I
Mhm.
saw that statistic.
Uh-huh.
They say it's because when a woman goes to court, she will bring all that statistics in, and they'll say it's premeditated.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So she's better off not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Which
Right.
which really
trying
stunned
to
me when I
prove
read that.
something.
Absolutely.
But people got to understand, like, your mind frame where you're at one
Wow.
point, you're going to click over to something else. Your mind, because what is happening in your mind, you're being controlled, and what's happening is, a lot of times women get so tired, their mental starts clicking into another point. You start turning, and you get tired.
Right.
As people know, women can handle a lot of things, but at some
Sitting in
point you
jail
get tired.
becomes a better lifestyle
Than getting
living
beat every day.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, because most of the times you have kids. You getting beat, the kids getting beat. You know what I mean? It's just the everyday thing, and not so much like physically beat. But I mean, some women are being held in rooms, not being fed, being locked up. You know, it's just all kind of things.
Right.
But I mean, like, a lot of them, I tell people, domestic violence, there's a lot of mental illness behind that.
Right.
A lot of women try to commit suicide even after they have left because the damage that has
Right.
been done
Yeah.
is almost like that. I mean,
Irreversible.
yeah, sometimes it can be helped,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, if you are not going to get the help,
Mm-hmm.
that mental illness is going to pick up and take off pretty quickly.
And
Right.
what's sad about that is they say that a woman will leave 6 times. The 7th time out is when she has enough strength to stay.
Yeah.
So she'll come back 6 times, and every time she comes back, the abuser has to up that violence to make her
Mm.
more fearful of leaving again.
Wow.
For whatever reason, she can't find a job. The kids are crying for the other parent.
Mm-hmm.
Ministers tell them to go back together. Go out and make it work for whatever reason.
Right.
But they leave 6 times, and that 7th time
Yeah.
is when they finally seem to
Yeah.
have the strength to stay
Like
away.
7
And that
to
is
10
true.
times it
Yeah.
takes.
Wow, and that could take
Seven.
years.
It can
Absolutely.
take years. I mean, some people
Absolutely.
just stick with it because they're just like, they just think there's nothing else out there. There's nothing better for me.
But I want to say
Because
there
your
is.
mind does go there.
Right.
There
There is something
is.
better
There's
out
something better than that. You can get through it. You know what I mean? And I tell people, that's the first thing I tell people to do is pray about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think and when you in your stuff, like, and I talk about that in my book, like, I'm a Christian. I'm a strong Christian. I believe in praying. I believe in meditating. I believe in listening to what he's saying. When I was in it, you couldn't get me to go to church. You couldn't get me to say anything about God
Why
because
was
it
that?
was just, I was a disconnect. I was in a place where I was just wanting to drown out everything.
Mm-hmm.
And everything meant, when I turned 21, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
I did nothing but drinking and partying from Thursday to Sunday.
Wow. And this becomes a generational thing
Mhm.
because, we haven't talked a lot about it, but in these abusive relationships, kids often see and hear everything.
Absolutely.
We
They see
don't
it
think
all.
these kids hear and see stuff. They see everything and know everything and hear everything.
Yeah.
And this is that's when it becomes generational
Mm-hmm.
because now these kids are going to grow up and it's going to continue.
They say 80% of the time, the kids are watching their mother get beat up
Wow.
and being taught that's what it is. That's what
crazy.
a healthy relationship looks like. That's
Right.
basically that's what you're saying. This is what a healthy relationship looks like.
So do you both have programs that target helping the kids as well? Because, you help the parents, but the kids are still seem to be, left out there in the, is there programs that help kids understand what just happened and how to, deal
I
with that?
always refer the parents to, either I refer them to a therapist, a child therapist,
Mm-hmm.
or I refer them to the Children's Bureau's programs because
Okay.
they have a lot of domestic violence programs within themselves for the mom and the
Good.
children.
Mhm.
It's just something that you go through a system to get into
Right.
this program,
Right, for
unfortunately.
sure.
But
That's a whole nother thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah,
whole
dealing with the kids.
yeah, whole other
Absolutely.
thing. I mean, kids is, and that's one thing I talk to my people because almost everyone in my support group has a child or one child or more,
Mhm.
and I let them know. I said, you got to understand, these kids, especially nowadays, they know
Mhm.
everything, and you
Mhm.
can think that 2-year-old baby or that 1-year-old baby
Yep.
is not. This is not going to. I said the development started in the womb, so if this is going on outside of the womb,
That's a good.
this is
Yes.
you're doing damage already.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point.
And this is not something they're going to outgrow.
Right.
They can't outgrow the trauma that they've seen. They've been a child that's seeing a mom getting punched in the face over and over and over.
Yeah.
That is traumatizing.
It's unreal because then there's no
Even
one to help.
arguing, even the tension of the arguing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I talk about that in my book because we argued for 3 years straight every day, and our child was standing at our knees hollering and screaming, and we're hollering and screaming at each other face to face. You know what I
Wow.
mean? And that screaming right there is
Mhm.
so much high tension.
Right.
Like it's so much trauma for a child. Like
Mhm.
that's just it's so damaging. Like, but it can be helped.
Right.
It can be helped.
And I am the same way. I have worked with juveniles, but I've only worked with juveniles who are mandated over to adult jail or the adult
Mm-hmm.
court system. So I've not worked with young kids.
Okay.
But my hope is to have the relationships grow and be healthy so that I don't even have to worry about the kids. The
Absolutely.
kids will
Right.
be starting
Right.
to be
You're
raised
starting
in
at
a
the
healthy
source.
environment.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. That's
Yeah.
awesome. We talk a lot about. Go ahead. Yes.
Well, the viewers. Well, first of all, thank you for tuning in. There's a couple of questions. One viewer asked, "What triggers an abuser to just hit their partner for the first time when everything is going great one minute, then the next minute all hell breaks loose?"
I think it's just I don't know what triggers a person. I can't, honestly, I don't even have an opinion for what triggers somebody. But I think, like, for some people, it could be alcoholism. It could be something out of place. It could be something that you said. It could be the way you said it. It could be the way you did something.
Yeah.
And they click. It could be something that triggered them from something that happened to them. And that they're triggered.
Oh,
It could
like
be
trigger
something
words.
like, you could say trigger words,
Yeah.
but something from their past
Oh, okay.
could just, something could trigger that, and they can snap.
Act out.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to answer because it could
Yeah.
be a million and one
Mhm.
things that happen. But they do know that, say kids, teens, going into sports, and it's true with adults too. You are who you hang with, and you might have a boy that's in sports that has never been in an abusive situation, but his teammates see him talking to his girlfriend, you know, we'll do this, we'll do that, kind of telling him what's going on, and so he gets teased by the other guys, and they're like, come on, you gotta man up, you gotta show her who's boss,
Right.
and he might push her, and the next time it might be a little bit worse, or a little bit worse, so that's one basic that
Self-esteem.
starts,
Peer
yes.
pressure.
Peer
Self-esteem.
pressure is
Yep.
very hard.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it is. Oh, and then another viewer wrote, how often do you see people that need the drama in order to feel alive?
That need to be in control.
No, say that again, I didn't.
Yeah.
How often do you see people that need the drama in order to feel alive?
Well,
People who feed off drama.
I
Yeah.
think people who feed off drama, again, is the drama's all over here because they don't wanna look in here.
Mm,
So the more the drama, to me, the more they have to look here. The more they're hiding and running
yeah,
from themselves.
yeah,
Yeah.
People only stir up drama because they're trying to divert their attention from something else.
yeah. Could be, yeah, and they
Yeah.
could, and that could just be what they have been, used to.
Right, and that's what I was gonna say too. I mean, I think that's a lot of self-love, self-care there that's going on. Like, if you're attracting yourself to drama and you like it, there's something going on with self, because you got to ask yourself, why am I infused by this? Why do I love it?
Right.
And you got to say, is this something I'm going to deal with for the rest of my life? Am I always going to be in this negative realm? Am I always going to be in the drama realm? When is this going to stop? But
Right.
if in order for it to stop, it starts with self, like she said. That's a self-love,
Absolutely.
self-care type of situation.
And I might suggest too, if anybody would like to take a suggestion, is writing. Writing is so therapeutic, and people don't
Man.
understand that. Psychiatrists say that we have millions of thoughts pinging in our head at all times. And until we write them down, they don't become concrete.
Right.
Once you write something down, it's clearer.
Yeah,
Right.
you see it, you see it.
So when I started my healing, I did, and I still do, so much writing, even if it's just a word to start with, because sometimes you've got so much fear inside of you, you're afraid somebody's going to see it, or you're afraid that if you start to write,
Right.
it might tap into something you don't want to tap into. That's another
Yeah.
reason.
Right.
So, but writing is really
Yeah.
a good therapy.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's
Exercise.
good.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about the physical violence, but domestic abuse it can come in the form of verbally and mental. There's
Absolutely.
people that play a lot of mind games.
Financially,
And
yeah.
there's
Yeah.
people that do a lot of verbal
Absolutely.
assault too,
Absolutely.
which can be definitely detrimental as well. As detrimental as physical.
Yeah.
I personally, in all the abuses that I have had, I think verbal abuse is the most, the deepest one that's felt, because your broken bones heal, your black eyes heal, the cuts heal, but those words that go, that record plays and that record can click on no matter how much healing you've done, even to this day. Something will trigger, I was a supervisor, and my boss would say, hey, you take lead on this. And immediately I would think, I can't do this. I'm too dumb. I'm too stupid.
Right.
And I would have to say, stop it, Lucia.
Right.
And I have to talk myself down and
Yep.
say, you can do this. You're
Yep.
not stupid.
Right.
You're a very intelligent woman.
Right.
And so I think that verbal abuse is the hardest one to get over.
Wow.
I think so too. That verbal and emotional abuse is the most damaging. It is the most damaging because we grow up and they say sticks and stones don't break my bones. Words will never hurt me. That is a lie.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And I learned that lie real quick when I got in that relationship. But like she was saying, I do want to touch back on that. Writing is very healing. That was a narrative healing for me. That's what that's called. And so when you're writing, it's like a narrative healing. You could tell your story and never put it to anybody, but in that story you are healing. It is taking you to a place that you never really wanted to go to. And when you get to that place, you like, I can't do this, like she just said. a million times in this last year, I've told myself, I can't do this. There's no way I should be writing a book. I am not an author. I am not good enough to do this. But I had positive affirmations for myself. Like, I was very self-aware, and I get in the mirror and I have to tell myself, like, you're smart, you're wonderful, you're absolutely brilliant, and you are going to write this book. You're going to get it done.
Awesome.
Like, these are things that you have to take to get through some of the things you have to get through. Like, I tell people all the time, if you can use affirmation in the mirror every day, because looking in that mirror when you're in an abusive relationship is the hardest thing to do. Whether you're in physical or not, that verbal, you looking in the mirror thinking, I'm stupid. Because you're being told that. And it doesn't take it don't take 10 times for somebody can tell you you're stupid. The person that you love is standing in front of you telling you you stupid and you ugly and you dumb. That is so hurtful.
Right.
So you like, you believe it.
Right.
You absolutely believe it. Because you like, dang,
Right.
this person loves me and they would do that to me.
And I want to bounce off something that you said, because I didn't realize till after I went through my healing, I never looked in the mirror and saw myself.
Right.
I would fix my hair, I'd put my makeup on, but I never saw me.
Right.
And it didn't dawn on me until after I healed. When I looked in the mirror one day, I'm like, oh my God, that's what you look like.
Right.
It's,
Yep.
I know it's
Yep.
hard to understand that, but and I was in my 40s when I finally did that.
Yep.
Wow.
That was the same for me. Same thing. Absolutely same thing. Like, I was the type of person, like, when I was growing up, I had very long hair, so I was always in the mirror, combing hair, putting on makeup or whatever, but really wasn't looking. I tell people, if you can look into somebody's eyes, you can see the pain. You can see the pain. Because it's there. Which is with you as yourself, you're not looking at yourself.
Right.
Right.
You're just looking in the mirror to make sure that you're groomed right, but you
Right.
are not really looking inside of you.
Because you see yourself as a nobody.
Right,
You're just
exactly.
going through the motions of what everybody else needs and wants.
Right.
Wow.
You're not a priority.
I'm so glad that programs that you all have put together and your book that's coming out this weekend, you're getting ready to sell it, that you all have put in the energy and the effort to put this out there and provide a platform for people to come to you, when they're hurting, when they're down, and when they're in these situations, because without you, they wouldn't know what to do and know where to go, which is why we try to have this platform available for people to come on and say, hey,
Right.
there is help.
Right.
There is help out here.
Right.
And we have a class starting. May I say that?
Yes, absolutely.
We have a class starting on September 4th. We have a class starting.
Sorry, guys.
We have a class starting on September 4th. It's a 6-week class, 2 hours each week. It'll end October 9th, and it's going to be at the Church Within. It's at 1125 Spruce Street, Indianapolis. And to register, call 317-435-3473.
That's
And the
awesome.
one thing that's great about our classes is we don't tell you that you're bad, we don't tell you that you're wrong, and we don't tell you that you've made stupid choices. What we do is we empower you to understand why you make the choices you make.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And then you want to build from that point.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Violence-free living.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Love it. I love that your program is for both sides. And
yeah.
It's just not
I've
one
never heard of
side.
that before.
Yeah,
Right.
that is
I've never
unique
heard of that.
Right.
and very necessary.
I've not seen another one like it. So
No.
Yeah.
It's not.
Hopefully,
It's not.
hopefully there are more out there, but I have not found one. So
Because I think I've tried to get almost every domestic violence resource, and I don't, I think I told you this. That's just not something that's offered, and it needs to be offered. Like there needs to be a partnership with people like the Julian Center, the Colburn Place,
Yeah.
Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Like that is our whole coalition. Like they pretty much have all the resources there. Like this is something that they need to tell people about because they do
Absolutely.
executive director meetings once a month.
That's
And this
amazing.
is something that needs to be talked about because I think people would have a better understanding
absolutely.
about it. Yeah.
Yes.
And I just hope that people understand, whether you're a victim or whether you're an abuser, there is hope out there. There's people who care. We are living proof of that. At one point in
Absolutely.
time, I had a 357 to my head, and the
Wow.
only thing that kept me from pulling that trigger, I had it cocked. The only thing that kept me from pulling that trigger, I wasn't going to let the SOB know he got to me.
Wow.
So, I mean, I've come a long way.
Great
Mhm.
strength.
So
Right.
I
Absolutely.
just
Powerful.
hope the people out there understand they have worth. You know,
Right.
that's my fear. I know so many people out there don't think that they matter in this world, or they don't have worth in this world. I've cried myself to sleep many, many years thinking nobody cared about me. And I just personally want to say, we do care about you.
Right.
please find somebody. If
definitely
not this
care.
program, if not reading your book, if not somewhere,
Right.
please
I mean,
find
if
someone
you,
to
right,
start talking
if you
to.
have someone to talk to, if you, like she said, if you don't have one of our programs, there are so many resources in this city that people do not know about. Like, there was a lot of things once I got started doing my program that I learned about different resources. It's not just the Julian Center and the Colburn Place. There's so many resources to help people in domestic violence, and there's people that will talk to you. I think the thing is, you know, you got to know that you are enough. You are loved. There's people who care about you. Your family cares about you. But we have to make the first step and say something.
And your story is super incredible. You didn't even get to touch on like everything that happened to
No.
you. I mean, you went through some
No.
pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's very, and the
Still
book
here
is
today.
very evolving. And I try to tell people it. I had one lady. She brought the book, and she works with me. She came back the next day. She was like, "Hey," she didn't even clock in. She's like, "I finished the book. I got it last night in the mail, and I finished it."
Wow.
She was like, "I cannot believe." She's like, "I could not put it down because if I put it down, I wouldn't know what was going to happen next to you." She was like, "Even though I know you're here, but I needed to know what was happening next because so much was happening so quickly." And I tell people like, there was not a lot of emotion to put out there because I couldn't even grasp it. I couldn't even grasp it because it was happening so quickly. I mean, it was something like if it wasn't every morning, it was every night. It was something happening that quickly and that much. So, yeah, I mean, the story is, I know it's a good story. It's a lot to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pick up that book.
Pick
Pieces
up the book.
of Me.
It's
Memoir
on
of
Amazon,
Felicia Frederick.
and you can come to the book launch on Saturday at Art Bank at 11 o'clock at Massachusetts Avenue.
Absolutely.
No, it's 1 o'clock. Sorry.
1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So
Saturday.
one last time, give your websites and where they can get in touch with you.
Okay. Where's this too?
Okay.
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Okay. So my website is www.susuglobal. So that's www.susuglobal.com. And you can get the books on the website as well. The books are also on Amazon. I have the books on hand that I can give to you. The books are $15. The book launch is Saturday. We're going to be having prize giveaways. The prize giveaways are anything from Starbucks all the way up to gas cards, Panera, Chick-fil-A, and how that's working. We're just giving out raffle tickets and pulling names and giving prizes out. And we'll have desserts and hors d'oeuvres and mingling. And there'll be some photographs taken. And so then on my website, you can see the workshops, you can see the coaching. There is a new coaching program that I am doing, and it's called How to Overcome Fear and Finding Your Purpose. Because in writing this book, I had to overcome fear. I was very fearful of writing that book. And it had nothing to do with the abuser. It was all about within me.
Right.
I was fearful of being somebody great. So, yeah.
Well, we're glad you're here now.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm so glad I'm here. I'm so glad I'm
Absolutely.
here, and it's, it's just wonderful to go out and touch people's lives and inspire people and empower people through the story,
transparent.
and just be transparent and just tell what you can tell. You know what I mean? And just be okay with it and be okay with your story.
Yeah.
Like it's just amazing.
Don't help somebody.
Yeah.
That's what's cool, is to be able to say, this is me, and I love me.
Yeah.
What
Right,
I am what I am,
exactly.
and what I am is beautiful.
Right.
Right,
Exactly.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And then my website is www.chooseforward.org, and or you could call 317-435-3473, and you can also sign up for the class on the web too.
Awesome. Yeah, we want to make sure that y'all, when y'all have a chance, go into the news feed and enter
Yeah.
that information as well.
Okay.
We just
Okay.
want to,
Personally,
from the gray area, personally thank you both for being transparent, telling your stories, touching on. I know this is like some sensitive stuff,
it is.
but there's people listening in that they're probably empowered and ready to go do something, because a lot of people, like you said, they hide behind this wall of shame,
Right.
and they don't have an outlet. But hopefully, we've provided a way and you all have provided a way for them to come out of their shell and be great.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. That's what it's all about. It's
Yeah.
not. It's about people being great and just coming out of that shell. It's hard, and it's been a hard process, but it can be done. Anybody can do it. Not
Yeah.
just because I'm sitting here saying that.
Right.
It's a process that you go to. You take step by step, day by day.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? In the process, you'll see in like even 6 weeks the difference in your life.
And I have several sisters, but my one sister I've gotten so extremely close to, and she told me one thing that I will never forget when I was going through mine. At times it can be painful to come through. I mean, obviously, scare, fear, and all that. But she said, it's like giving birth, Lucia. She said how painful and excruciating was that pain, but how beautiful when you held that baby.
Oh,
Just giving
that's
birth
nice.
to yourself.
Yeah, that's nice.
I thought that was a really neat
Yeah.
analogy.
Tell
Yeah.
your sister she need to put that on a T-shirt.
Maturation
Right.
process.
Sell it.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
a great analogy, and that's good. And you know, I just hope that people feel empowered now to go do
I
something.
hope so. I pray.
I hope so.
You know,
I pray
it's
too.
Yeah.
especially from I didn't see a lot of that growing up, and I just can only imagine like seeing that and like being like traumatized, like wow, this is happening in front of me.
Right.
So you know, your stories are very impactful,
Yeah.
and it also for people who haven't even gotten to that situation yet gives them the red flags and the alerts to understand and know, hey, you know, maybe this dude or maybe this woman ain't for me, you know, with all that extra stuff they got going on.
Right.
So thank you for that. Make sure y'all go get the book.
Powerful story.
Make sure
man.
y'all visit the susuglobal.com
Yep, .com.
and
Violence Free Living.
Violence Free Living.
And
Choose
sign up for the
forward.
class. Choose Forward.
ChooseForward.com. And make sure y'all sign up for
.org.
the
Mine's
dot
.org.
dot org.
.org.
ChooseForward.org. And we also want to thank the viewers for always tuning in and sharing our feeds. We cannot do this without your support, so continue helping us, continue sharing it, continue supporting us, and we love y'all. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you for having us.
Thank you
Thank
for
Thank
coming.
you so much. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yes, absolutely. This is dope.
Are we done?
Yes.
Did I do okay?
I did
Yeah,
perfect.
you did good.
Great.
Both
That
of
was
you
good.
did.
Like you were just going with it.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
It
Yes,
was.
it was good.
Two strong women.
And do you
Too
know what? It was
strong.
my brother-in-law.
Beautiful,
And do you want to
beautiful,
know something? What was amazing? I was 11. He didn't deny it. What he argued was, I wasn't 11, I was 13.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that
Really?
amazing?
Like that made it a
Yeah, exactly.
like you could take it because it was 2 years older. Wow. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
Did he get any time for that?
Pardon me?
Did he go to jail or anything for
No,
that? No.
no. He lived in Ohio at the time, and to be honest, I have a lot of people in my class even ask me that. He lived in Ohio, and when we went up to confront him, I was dealing with so much of myself and trying to get
Yeah.
things, and the family was dealing with things that I didn't have the energy to even do that.
Right. Exactly.
I know I've had people say, well, then